Hey friends, welcome back to A Simple Truth, where we are talking leprosy. A lot of leprosy. We talked leprosy last time. We're going to talk leprosy this time. We talked, I want to say, different regulations about what should happen if you are found to be unclean. This time we're going to be looking at healed lepers. We're also going to be looking at some of their housing as well. We're going to take a look at bodily discharges. So I got to be careful what I put in the description there. But yeah, so again, going through Leviticus and taking a look at what does God's purposeful life look like for his chosen people. So they have their laws, they have their commandments, but what should the day-to-day look like? So that's what we're going to continue to take a look at. So today, Leviticus 14 and 15. So chapter 14. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall examine him. And indeed, if the leprosy is healed in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him, who is to be cleansed, 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel, over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose in the open field. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. And after that he shall come into the camp, and he shall stay outside his tent 7 days. But on the 7th day he shall shave his hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, and all his hair he shall shave off. He shall wash his clothes and wash his body in water, and he shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, 1 ewe lamb of the first year without blemish, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. Then the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean and those things before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and offer it as a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he shall kill the lamb in the place where he kills the sin offering and the burnt offering in a holy place. As for the sin offering, it is the priest's, so it is a trespass offering. It is most holy. The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil, and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. And the priest shall dip his right finger into the oil that is to be in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. And the rest of the oil in his hand the priest shall put on the tip of his right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed. So the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest shall offer the sin offering and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanliness. Afterward he shall kill the burnt offering, and the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. So the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and cannot afford it, then he shall take 1 male lamb as a trespass offering to be waved to make atonement for him, 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, as he is able to afford. One shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. He shall bring them to the priest on the 8th day for cleansing, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord. And the priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own hand. Then the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before the Lord. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, in the place of the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hands he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement of him before the Lord. And he shall offer one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, such as he can afford, such as he is able to afford, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, with the grain offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before the Lord. This is the law for one who has a leprous sore, who cannot afford the usual cleansing. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you have come into the land of Canaan, which I have given you as a possession, and I will put the leprous plague in a house in the land of your possession, and he who owns the house comes and tells the priest, saying, It seems to me that there's a plague in the house. Then the priest shall command that the empty house before the priest goes in to examine the plague, that all that is in the house may not be made unclean. And afterward the priest shall go in to examine the house. And he shall examine the plague, and indeed, if the plague is on the walls of the house, within grained streaks, greenish or reddish, which appears to be deep in the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house, shall shut up the house 7 days, and the priest shall come again on the 7th day and look. And indeed, if the plague is spread on the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which is the plague, and they shall cast them into the unclean place outside the city. And he shall cause the house to be scraped inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour into an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take other stones and put them in the place of these stones. And he shall take other mortar and plaster the house. Now, if the plague comes back and breaks out on the house, and he has taken away the stones, after he has scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look. And if indeed the plague is spread over all the house, it is an active leprosy in the house. It is unclean. And he shall break down the house, its stones, its timber, and the plaster of the house, and he shall carry them outside the city to an unclean place. Moreover, he who goes into the house at all while it is shut up shall be unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house shall wash his clothes. He who eats in the house shall wash his clothes. But if the priest comes in and examines it, and indeed the plague has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And he shall take to cleanse the house 2 birds, cedarwood, scarlet, and hyssop. Then he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedarwood, the hyssop, the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. And he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and the running water, and the living bird with the scarlet wood, the hyssop, with the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet. Then he shall let the living bird loose outside the city in the open field, and make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the law for any leprous sore and scale, for the leprosy of a garment and of a house, for a swelling and a scab and a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. Chapter 15. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, When any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean, and this shall be his uncleanliness in regard to his discharge. Whether his body runs with his discharge or his body is stopped up by his discharge, it is his uncleanliness. Every bed is unclean on which he has the discharge lies, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. And whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. He who sits on anything which he has had the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who touches the body of him who had the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. If he who has the discharge spits on him who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which he has the discharge rides shall be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until evening. He who carries any of the things shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whomever the one who has the discharge touches, and has not rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. The vessel of earth that he who has the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. And when he who has the discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for the cleansing, washing of clothes, and bathe his body in running water. Then he shall be clean. On the 8th day he shall take for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and give them to the priest. Then the priest shall offer them, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord because of his discharge. If any man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all over his body in water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment and any leather on which there is semen shall be washed with water, and be unclean until evening. Also, when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. If a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her body is blood, she shall be set apart for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything that she lies on during her impurity shall be unclean. Also, everything that she sits on shall be unclean. Whoever touches her bed, washes her clothes, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches anything that she sat on shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. If anything is on her bed, or anything on which she sits, whenever she touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. And if any man lies with her at all, so that her impurity is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. If a woman has discharge of blood for many days, other than at the time of her customary impurity, or if it runs beyond her usual time of impurity, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean. Every bed on which she lies, all the days of her discharge, shall be to her the bed of her impurity, and whatever she sits on shall be unclean, as the uncleanliness of her impurity. Whoever touches those things shall be unclean. He shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the priest shall offer one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before the Lord for the discharge of her uncleanliness. Thus you shall separate the children of all Israel from their uncleanliness, lest they die in their uncleanliness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits his semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is indisposed because of her customary impurity, and for the one who has a discharge, either a man or a woman, and for him who lies with her who is unclean. So, a lot there and a lot of tongue twisters. And I think all I'm left with, I just keep being left with all the regulations and all the laws, and that there really are multiple different angles. Number one, for germs, right? Because however long ago, they may not have known about bacteria and molds in houses and all of that. So tearing down the walls and looking at that and recognizing, hey, this is either clean or unclean, as well as bacteria in the body too, and blood. And God recognizing, hey, I want my people, I want their lives to look different. So this is all the regulations. So I think I'm left with that. And then I also wrote this question down. Are we living our lives with the purpose that reflects our relationship to God? Because I see this as, again, I know I mentioned it before, as a very purposeful life. And we now have cleanliness through Christ. So is that something that we are leaning into? Are we living that way? Or do we simply profess and not do anything about it? Anyway, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. But yeah, as always, thanks so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day. See you then.